X-Men 97 Episode 3 just did a 30-minute speed run of the entire Madelyne Pryor saga. And this is one of the major drawbacks of adaptations is that you miss so much context and story development. If you've never read the comics, you have no idea how much stuff you're missing, which I suppose is a good thing, but that lack of context makes this whole thing seem more like a detour from the main storyline of the season rather than the grand narrative that it is. So at the end of the last episode, a disheveled Jean Grey showed up to the X-Mansion, and the X-Men believed her to be a clone. Morph even comes to calling her Jean Doe, which is kind of funny. But within the first 2 minutes of this episode, Beast tests the DNA of Jean Doe and who they believe to be Jean, and just comes out without any tact at all and tells everyone that who they believe to be Jean is actually the clone. And from now on, I'm going to call her Madelyne Pryor, even though she doesn't call herself that until the end of the episode, just to make things more clear. But Madelyne Pryor is shocked at the reaction of the X-Men, especially at Scott, who, when she turns to him, is just dumbfounded, which who wouldn't be in finding out that their wife is actually a clone. And because she feels betrayed by the X-Men, she storms off with Nathan to his room. While Beast is continuing to test Jean's DNA, we find out that Bishop is trapped in this time period because his time device needs repairing, which answers my question of why Bishop was even here in the first place, because he's never with the X-Men without a specific reason. But Beast learns that Madelyne Pryor's DNA has the signature of Mister Sinister, who is a longtime X-Men villain and was introduced early on in X-Men the Animated Series as someone who was trying to obtain the DNA of Scott and Jean, believing that their child would be an incredibly powerful mutant. And Mister Sinister actually contacts Madelyne Pryor and relays this information to her as well. And learning that she is in fact the clone, she becomes really angry and transforms herself into the Goblin Queen. This is also a result of the fact that Mister Sinister implanted a form of mind control in her when he created her. Now, her transformation into the Goblin Queen isn't given a specific cause, because she now has quasi-magical abilities, even though Mr. Sinister is a geneticist, not a sorcerer. So it's not really explained how she gets magic powers. In the comics, she actually makes a deal with two demons to gain those powers. But now that she's evil and has magical abilities, she uses this power to haunt the X-Men. She haunts Roberto and Jubilee while they're watching a movie. And when did Roberto come back? He left at the end of episode 1, and it was never implied that he was coming back anytime soon. But he's here now hanging out with the X-Men and even uses his powers. Madelyne Pryor also haunts Gambit with what I believe is going to become a running gag, where Gambit becomes more and more insecure over the fact that Rogue and Magneto are hooking up. We learn that Morph is actually gay for Wolverine, and who would have seen that coming? Well, that does make his friendship with Wolverine kind of creepy now. But she continues to haunt the X-Men and actually brings them into the Brimstone dimension, or perhaps just a psychic version of it. And the X-Men end up being overwhelmed by demons until Jean Grey wakes up and is able to save the X-Men, leading Madelyne Pryor to take Nathan and bring him to Sinister, where she learns about her origins as a clone. Mr. Sinister then takes Nathan and exposes him to the techno-organic virus, believing that it's going to make him even stronger if he survives. Magneto leads a strike team to Sinister's location in order to save Nathan. However, the team is easily defeated by Madelyne Pryor. This is when Jean shows up in her psionic form, and the two do battle on the psychic plane. And the battle is mainly the two of them combating each other with memories to figure out who remembers more of their previous life, who is more Jean Grey, even though both of them know that Madelyne Pryor is the clone. In the end, Jean is able to sway Madelyne Pryor by reminding her that Nathan is Madelyne Pryor's son. That part is real, and it's the most precious part of her life. And so Madelyne and Scott go to save Nathan from Mr. Sinister, and they manage to do so, except that Nathan has already been infected. And once they take him back to the X-Mansion, they find out that they don't have the ability to save Nathan here. So they have to send Nathan away with Bishop to the future, where he believes that Forge and the futuristic technology that they have access to will be able to cure Nathan. Now, in the comics, Nathan was actually taken to the future by his alternate reality future sister, Rachel Summers, who is also the daughter of Scott and Jean. Now, Nathan would eventually grow up to become the time-traveling character Cable. And in fact, the techno-organic virus always survives within him, and he has to use his great psychic abilities to basically fend off the virus and make it so that it's only taken over his arm and not the rest of his body. But after Bishop takes Nathan to the future, Madelyne Pryor decides to leave the X-Mansion as she believes there's one gene too many, and that's when she actually starts calling herself Madelyne Pryor. And she seems to be a good guy, which is not how the Madelyne Pryor saga ended in the comics. The episode ends with Storm in a bar in the Southwest, and there she meets Forge, who believes that he can use his technology to cure her and give her back her mutant abilities. Now, Forge in the future is there to help Bishop with the time travel stuff, but in the present, assuming they're still going along with the canon of the original animated series, is actually the leader of X Factor, which is a mutant group that works alongside the US government. Now, being a comic book fan, as well as a fan of the original series, this episode was interesting, but also extremely disappointing at the same time, because, for reference, Madelyne Pryor is introduced in, I think it's Uncanny X-Men 168 in 1883. She doesn't become Goblin Queen until Uncanny X-Men 240 in 1988. And in that same year is when she has her psionic battle with Jean Grey and is defeated and killed, which also didn't happen in the show. So we missed out on 5 years of comics so that they could do a one-off episode with that storyline. And on the one hand, I get that, if they're fans of the X-Men, they want to include as many callbacks to the original comics as possible, but this isn't the way to do it. When I saw episode 2, I assumed this was going to be like a multi-season saga, not one that took up the entirety of each season, but one that they kept coming back to. Instead, they mashed and convoluted everything into 30 minutes in a way that certain things don't make sense, like how Madelyne Pryor got magic powers, why she would turn against the X-Men so quickly after just learning that she was a clone, even though she adamantly believed that she wasn't. And hey, if you're going to do the entire Madelyne Pryor saga in a single episode, then why not also introduce Rachel Summers and have her be the one to take Nathan to the future and leave Bishop in the present? When you adapt a story in this way, it doesn't make sense when you add in certain things and don't add in others. Madelyne Pryor is still alive in the show, and she's a good guy now, which is weird, so I'm not sure where they're going to go with that. If they go anywhere, it's possible that that storyline is now ended, and again, I don't understand, other than just doing the quick reference, I don't understand why they even did it. We could have just continued going on, assuming that the Jean Grey that we saw here was in fact Jean Grey. So the callbacks to the comics were kind of cool. I just think the Madelyne Pryor saga wasn't done justice. It was well intended, but poorly executed. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Whether you're a non-comic book reader and thought this episode was confusing, or if you were a comic book reader and agree with my opinion that they just put too much into one episode, or if you were fine with it. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss out on a new video. Thanks for watching.